When I was just about 10 years old, my mom decided to start a school. It was just a little Montessori at the time, but she built it with a purpose. The purpose of transforming the local community by developing the next generation of its young leaders. I remember setting the little chairs as the little kids arrived into the Montessori during my summer holidays. The school delivered a high-quality, values-based education. But even at the tender young age of 10, I thought she was doing it all the wrong way. The school was built to help this one specific community in a non-inclusive way. Only members of that one community went to the school. I was all of 10 years old, but I was philosophically opposed to this idea. Members of this community, children should interact with members of other community, I told my mother. They have so much to learn from each other. I admired my mom from a distance as she built the school with 1,000 students at the K-12 level. But that wasn't for me. I wanted to expand my horizons. I was the first in my extended family to study engineering. I went all the way around the world to Stanford University to get my grad school degree. And when I graduated, I landed my dream job at McKinsey & Company, the best consulting firm in the world. My life was on track. One summer, when I came back home to visit my parents in India, I was invited to the wedding of a distant cousin. My cousin's bride, interestingly, was from one of the poorest communities in Bangalore. It was known for its scrumptious street food, but sadly, its low level of education and high rates of unemployment. I decided to go because I loved the local biryani they served at the weddings. As I made my beeline for the wedding biryani counter, I found myself being followed by these little children. I didn't know why they were following me, but they were different from children from the rest of the community. There were these outward differences. They spoke and they greeted differently. But what was most different about them was the way they spoke about their aspirations for the future. They spoke to me about how they wanted to go to engineering colleges. They asked me how they could have the opportunity to study abroad like I did. Soon their moms started to flock around me, and they started to ask me about the rank required in the central examinations to get to the engineering colleges that I went to. It suddenly struck me then. One of the children from my cousin's bride's family had been to my mom's school. The experience of that one child had transformed this entire family. It shaped the way they thought about their future. That had a real impression on me. I still disagreed with the approach of my mom's school, but the impact was clear. She was transforming this community. I thought about it a little bit more on my flight back to Dubai. But the moment that plane touched down on the tarmac of the Dubai airport, I was back to my consulting career. You see, I loved my job. I was working as a leader of the best consulting firm in the world. I served the best companies from across the globe, from Jakarta to Nigeria, from London to Zambia. I worked my way up the consulting ladder to within one rung of that coveted title of partner at McKinsey & Company. That was 2 years ago. 2 years ago, I was having dinner at this fancy restaurant in Dubai with a friend, and in the middle of the delicious burrata, my friend looks at me and says, "Hey, Khurram, have you heard about this Ghanaian entrepreneur, Fred Swaniker? The guy who started ALA? He's got this crazy idea now. He wants to start 25 new universities with 10,000 students each. He wants to transform the African continent through education. Crazy idea, right? To my friend's surprise, I had a serious look on my face. I just looked at him and I said, "Go on." He started to tell me more, and I found myself getting really excited. My heart started to beat faster. Blood started to rush through my head. And all of a sudden, in the middle of this most accidental dinner conversation, I found myself making a serious life decision. Could I actually leave everything I had worked for so far and go off and chase this crazy idea I had just heard about? Just 5 minutes later, I found myself on the phone with my mother. I found myself telling her that I had found my own path of education to transforming communities. That I was going to move to a new city in a new continent. That I was going to go build 25 new universities with 10,000 students each. That I was going to go help build the African Leadership University. The next day, I got all excited and I went to work and I started to tell my colleagues already that I was leaving my job. To my surprise, they weren't nearly as excited. "Khurram, what do you mean you're going to leave everything all of a sudden and go off? Is this idea even on paper yet? Have you seen it? By the way, do you even know anything about education, Khurram?" My colleagues, they weren't the only skeptical ones. My friends thought I was joking. And my family was worried. They were worried about the uncertainty I was bringing on myself, on my future, and on them. But in spite of all of the opposition, I decided to leave, and it transformed my life. I didn't know it back then, but that one decision helped me find my path to meaning in life. My one true passion, my crazy love for education. Over the last 2 years, I've had the opportunity to reflect on that decision and the great outcomes that I live every single day today. Those reflections reveal 2 big lessons that I would like to share with you today. The first big lesson is that passions are truly personal. My friends, my family, my colleagues, and even my mentors all thought it was a terrible idea for me to leave and go do this. But somehow, I already knew within 5 minutes that this was my passion. They all tried to convince me against it. One of my colleagues even built an Excel model of salary expectations that I was walking away from. He said, "Hey Khurram, if you got promoted in the next 6 months, here's how much money you'd walk away from. If you got promoted the next year, here's how much money you'd walk away from. Neither of this makes any sense for you to leave." He just didn't get it. The fact is that I surprised my own rational self on how sure I felt about the decision at that time. Only now, when I look back, I can connect the dots. And I now know that that passion was linked to deep childhood experiences linked to my mom's school. The impact that I saw of my mom's school on that wedding day of my distant cousin. I disagreed with the approach of my mom's school, but I was inspired by its impact. With ALU, I found the opportunity to have that same impact with a method that I agreed with. The feeling of passion was personal to me. I found many happy jobs by getting advice from my mentors, but they never helped uncover my one true passion, my one crazy love for education. So my first lesson: passions are truly personal, and you can only find them by looking inside and not through external advice. The second lesson that I would like to share with you today is that the big barriers that you see when you get started in chasing your dream, those big barriers, most of them are imaginary. We faced many big barriers when we first got started with the ALU project. It's really hard to go do something that's so different from the status quo. It's particularly hard when you don't have the formal skills or experience in the field. That's the situation I found myself at ground zero when ALU was just getting started. Traditional educators started to question our model. My friends frequently reminded me that of the top 50 universities in the world, the youngest was over 100 years old. Now, who were we to say in 2014 that we were going to come and start the next best university in the world? My personal insecurity started to catch up with me. There were so many uncertainties I had added to my personal life. I had moved to a new city in a new continent. My career path seemed non-existent. But here's what I learned through those early challenges and struggles. Challenges do not feel nearly as hard or as painful as they seem when you follow your one true passion. I remember in one particularly bad month, when many of my early colleagues had left ALU, I got a call from one of my former bosses. He said, Khurram, this whole startup thing, it's very uncertain. You know, most of these startups fail anyways. If you want to come back, just let me know. You can join exactly where you left off. I remember how ridiculous I found that conversation. And I got angry. I said, what do you mean leave? I'm barely getting started. 6 months into the ALU experience, we decided to run a learning lab. We finally had the opportunity to prove to those detractors that our model worked. Just 1 week before that lab, one of the 4 foundation core faculty members for a course called Data and Decisions decided to drop out. I decided to step in. I moved into the high school dorms, and I decided to spend all of my time cracking this problem. The dorms were cold. It was the middle of the Johannesburg winter. They had turned off the heating because most of the high school students had gone away for their holidays. I remember that was exactly 1 year since I checked myself into the beautiful St. Regis Hotel in Abu Dhabi. I had just started serving a new client at McKinsey, and that client was supposed to help me get elected as partner in a matter of a few months. The difference in comforts was clear. But I also remember the feeling of excitement. I was finally going to have the opportunity to serve students the very next day. The dream was finally becoming a reality, and the difference in comfort did not matter at all. As a faculty at that learning lab, I found so many opportunities to use my expertise from my previous experiences at the learning lab. I had once served a Pan-African mobile phone provider to help crack the distribution model for low-cost mobile phones to the most remote villages in 7 countries across the African continent back in 2008. Those same analytical approaches were being applied now at the Learning Lab to measure the learning outcomes for these students. Just think about it. The opportunity was for us to apply the analytical approaches from the last big revolution on the African continent to what I believe is the next big disruption, higher education. The results from that lab were phenomenal. External advisors reviewed our students' work, and they found 40% improvement in learning outcomes in just 1 month. The learnings from that lab are being applied today at the first university campus of ALU, the African Leadership College, right here in Mauritius, with 180 of our first students, the young leaders who are going to go off to the continent and start that revolution to transform the continent. We face many big challenges, many barriers that seem insurmountable when I stand here today. But I know this. fueled with the power of the passion of all of our students, the young leaders, and our staff members who are so passionate about this project, we will be able to uncover the assumptions behind these barriers, as I did, and realize that most of them are imaginary. My reflections together have brought me to this conclusion. There is a huge value at stake for all of us to live a meaningful and fulfilling life and transform the world while we do it. Each one of us has our own unique path to finding that meaning. And we can do it if we look inside. So I stand here today to invite you all. I stand here today to invite you all to live a life of meaning and not just success as measured by the sum of your comforts. My invitation goes out particularly to those of you who are already living a life of success, but are scared to leave behind that lucrative career. Do it. Bury your fears. Embrace the unknown. And let's join forces. Let's join forces to make this world a better place for all of us.